you'll see certain categories where, we have a very compact version of a product like the hacksaw, where we know that's used in a lot of tight quarters, really small spaces, and M12 allows us to get there. But we also have an M18 version for when you need a little bit more power, a little bit more runtime, and your application may be larger. So we do get to kind of pick and choose and create, again, that unique solution that's right for the applications at hand.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Fine Homebuilding contributing editor and production manager at TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwant. Today I am joined by two vice presidents of product management at Milwaukee Tool, Tyson Apfelbeck and Andrew Lentz. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. So thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So could you give our listeners an overview of what the both of you do at Milwaukee Tool?
Yeah, so Andrew and I are both, as you said, vice presidents of product development, product management. But really what that means is we both manage teams of product managers that spend a ton of time on the field working with end users, looking at new solutions, new ways to solve problems for professional power tool users. And then we work really closely with our development teams on the engineering side to develop those solutions, make sure we're delivering the right product for the end user. And we also get to do some of the more commercial end of the business as well. So a lot of what a user might see when they're shopping for a power tool, the packaging, the video, we work with the teams that develop those to make sure we're communicating all the great things that the team has developed. So quite a wide array of things, but really exciting work ultimately.
So over the last 10 years, we've had a golden age of the cordless power tool development, and we've had cordless versions of really heavy-duty tools like circular saws, sawzalls, framing nail guns, and all of these are so far keeping pace on professional job sites. What are some of the engineering breakthroughs that have fueled this growth?
Yeah, I think there's been three primary things that have fueled that growth: batteries, motors, and electronics. So I can break each one of those down for you. When we start with batteries, one of the biggest shifts in the industry was going from chemistry called NiCad to the introduction of lithium ion. So Milwaukee Tool introduced lithium ion in 2005, and it was a really big breakthrough in it for a couple of reasons. One big benefit is that we're able to provide a much higher power and energy density, right? So what it meant is that your tools could become more powerful and you could run them for longer. And there's been a pretty extensive evolution along the way with that as well that I'll speak to. In addition is on the motor side. So one of the big shifts there was going from more of call it like a brushed motor to high power brushless. And then the third advent was really advancement in electronics. And this is inclusive of higher power electronics, adding communication and intelligence, and really adding feature set along the way as well. So if you look at kind of the beginning of that journey, start with the shift to lithium ion. It was a pretty big breakthrough because, as mentioned, you had an increase in power and energy density, which really meant that you could get smaller, lighter solutions that were really powerful, right? Versus carrying traditionally, NiCad technology, which was big, heavy, cumbersome, and really didn't last very long as well. So users were really reliant on their corded products in addition to that. So along the way, there was quite a few breakthroughs in batteries, motors, and electronics. The first one I would say is going from what was called more of like a canned brushed motor and new lithium ion to a big jump in what was called an open frame brushed motor. And then there was also a big breakthrough in lithium ion. So starting with the motor, we were actually able to get a more power dense motor as well. So you're probably familiar with the journey where you saw products become more powerful, smaller. And then with batteries, we were able to deliver more power, lighter weight. We improved the performance in cold weather. So one of the first generations of lithium ion did not work great in extreme cold. So we made a lot of advancements there, and then continued the pursuit of additional runtime as well. So as we were starting to introduce, more products that could shift into corded or AC supplement replacement, we had to continue to add runtime to make sure that they didn't have to go back to the charger so many times. And then the next big breakthrough was really with the introduction of high power brushless motors, and then a further advancement of lithium ion and electronics. So to give you perspective, when this occurred, call in the 2012 through 2015 timeframe, we were actually getting to the point where we're able to match corded performance or start to exceed it with some products as well. And we continue to add a lot of power and capacity, faster charging, if you will, to the batteries. And then there's a step above that a few years later where we had another advancement in our power state brushless motor technology, what we called red lithium high output batteries, which was leveraging a cell in a 21700 format that was more capable, and then once again more powerful electronics. And now when we introduced that a few years ago, we were actually able to significantly outperform corded. So you can put out more power than you can actually pull from a 15 amp wall outlet. And really what all that translated to was a really big shift from AC or corded product to cordless, pneumatic to cordless. So instead of having to rely on, say you're in a shop environment and you have to rely on a big compressor and pulling a hose around with a high torque impact wrench, now we're able to put that in a cordless solution and actually outperform it. So a lot of big advancements over the last 10 to 15 years as a part of that journey.
One of the former editors for Fine Homebuilding, Kevin Ireton, once told me that the first time he used a pneumatic framing nailer in like the early 1980s, he was like, this is like seeing God. And I think some of those same people that were still around the first time they drove one with a battery powered gun that didn't have any of the other gas admixture that you have in some other manufacturers' framing guns. But I got to think some people thought the same thing the first time they just plugged a 5 amp hour battery in and drove framing nails into pressure treated lumber.
It's honestly one of the most fun things we get to do is to take out products, show them to users and get feedback on them and watch their perspective or perception of what cordless products can do change right in front of your eyes. Framing nailer is a great example, circular saws, but it's really across the board. All the things that Andrew just talked about have really unlocked our ability to not only get smaller, get faster, but lengthen the amount of time users can use these and truly replace the things that they've had to rely on for decades in a way that makes them more productive, more portable, and hopefully, makes their life easier is ultimately what we're trying to do and solve the problems they have every day.
So one of the questions we get a lot of times on the regular Fine Homebuilding podcast is, why can't I use my battery from this manufacturer with a tool from this manufacturer? And I think it's got to come down to the electronics, right, that make the communication between the motor and that battery. But I think that's something that isn't really in the zeitgeist of the tradesperson using the tool. So can you talk a little bit more about the engineering that goes into the communication between the battery and the rest of the tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So with electronics, it's pretty expansive in terms of the functionality that they provide. If we look at the introduction of the M18 system, that was in 2007, and that was the first time in the industry where there was a microprocessor in the tool, the pack, and the charger. And this provides a lot of benefits. One of them, which is exactly what you mentioned. One, they're able to control the functionality independently, but they also communicate to each other. And what this does is it'll optimize the power output, it'll optimize the control of the product. It'll also add stuff like protective features, right? So if you use a product and maybe an unintended use case, it'll sense that, shut itself off to protect your investment. And you're 100% right, as the technology in batteries, motors, and electronics have evolved over the last 10 to 15 years, it was the electronic infrastructure that was set in the beginning that's actually able to allow full backwards and forwards compatibility along the way. And hey, even beyond that, it's not just the communication piece. It actually plays a really big role in the power output as well. So if you're increasing the capability of a battery and of a motor, you have to be able to connect those two and reduce the resistance as much as possible to provide the most power out. And really what's been exciting, over the last few years and where it's going to go moving forward is adding new advanced feature sets, new safety protective features, even in getting into connectivity, right? Where someone can actually connect this product through one key to the cloud, put it in their inventory, track it, manage it, et cetera. So you're right. It plays a really critical role in the performance, the control, the protective feature, and overall connectivity of the products.
You guys offer a wide range of batteries too, from the low amp hour ones that typically are included with basic drills all the way up to the 12 amp hour battery packs that are included with some of the heavier duty tools. Talk a little bit about how you should go about matching the right battery to the tool. Is it typically the battery that you're including with the tool is the right one to use with the tool, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I'm going to start off by saying that we use M18 as an example that you brought up. If it's an M18 tool, battery, or charger, they're all compatible with each other, meaning that they're fully backwards compatible. So if you buy a battery today, you can use it with the tool from 5 years ago, and vice versa. That's step one. Now, when it gets into the optimization that you're talking about, yeah, you're absolutely right. So one, from a kitted standpoint, that's absolutely what we do. Is if you see us kit a product with a battery, that is the most optimized battery for that specific tool or application. Now, that being said, when we look at something like M18 that has well over 250 solutions that are essentially powered by the same type of battery system, if you will, there's definitely a benefit to creating optimized batteries depending on what you're doing. So a good way to think about it is first look at the tool and then the application that you have to complete. So we have 3 different sizes or capabilities of battery. The first one is what we call CP or compact. And that's really going to be great for your situations where you need something that's lightweight, compact. Maybe it's an example where you need good accessibility. So you're doing some finishing work and you need to fit it into a tight space, and weight and size really play an important role. So, and you really don't need a ton of runtime to complete that type of application. So a lot of benefits there. When you step up to our XC battery, which is extended capacity, that one really serves like a broad coverage, if you will. That'll be your most utilitarian, good for anything from light fastening the whole way up to like a more powerful application. And a good example here is actually the framer, I think, that you've referenced, where an XC50 battery is the perfect fit for that in terms of the right power, size, weight, and runtime. And then the final step up we have from that is our HD batteries. So high demand, and that's really going to be for products where it's really power hungry, requires a ton of runtime. So circ saws are a great example of this, where it's all about speed, power, productivity, less trips back and forth to the charger. So that being said, once again, they all work with each other, but that's the best way I would describe how to search out the right solution. And then the final thing I would say is within M18 and really in M12 as well, we have a step up in our battery pack. So we have our red lithium, which is kind of our baseline battery packs, and then we have our red lithium high output batteries. And the benefit when you step up to high output is that you actually get a 50% improvement in power, and those batteries run 50% cooler. So what that inevitably means is you can take your product today, upgrade to a high output battery, and instantly unlock more performance and run it harder and longer without fear of nuisance trips or battery over temp shutdowns.
We recently tested the vacuum, the cordless M18 vacuum that you guys put out, and the track saw in our shop for a magazine article. And I was surprised by the battery that was included with the track saw, because in my mind, thinking about that as a heavier duty tool, I expected to see a larger battery with it than I think it was a 6.0 that came with that tool, if I'm remembering right, in the kit. So how is it that maybe a customer who's used to the other skills or circle saws that you guys put out and who would be using them on 12 amp hour batteries, but then you're packaging a smaller battery with this saw, how does that work with the motor of that? Because I was surprised that there was really no loss in power with that tool when we tested it in the field.
Yeah, it's one of the things we do throughout a project and validating a new product with users is trying to really hone in on the right pack and solution for them. And I think that's a great example where as we were field testing that product, we found time and time again that the applications being done the way that the professional user was using a track saw, regardless if it's a half-inch piece of plywood or a 1 and 3/4 inch thick bar top that they're cutting down, that a 6 amp hour pack was delivering the performance that they needed. And adding the size and the weight and the cost of a much larger battery pack when maybe it wasn't necessarily required for all the applications wasn't, we didn't want to go down that path. So to what Andrew said before, compatibility is still a huge portion of what we care about. So we try to optimize that pack tool combination, but ultimately the user has the ability to kind of pair however they see fit. So if you're someone who's going to do a lot of cutting in a day where you believe you're going to use your track saw for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, you might want to go to a 12 amp hour battery. And the beauty of M18 as an example is that everything is compatible. So you can grab that pack off the charger if you have it for your circ saw or your sawzall and use it in your track saw. Or if there's a day when you know you're going to have to take that tool and work in a little bit more of a remote place where there's not going to be power, maybe you don't want to take the weight of that pack because your application won't require it. And you can move to a 6 amp hour or 5 amp hour XC battery, still get really strong performance, but not have to make the trade-off of having more weight. So the track saw is one example, but we do that over and over and over again on all of our products. And we believe so strongly in compatibility because of that ability to choose and really to optimize your solution based on your day or your application and not, just what we saw during our time out in the field necessarily. Yeah,
that the track saw in particular got a bit of a baptism by fire from us because it was used for careful demo of a roof deck and then also used to rip LVLs down to fit in reframing the roof deck. So it got some atypical use right out of the box from us.
That's a great example of where maybe stepping into a 12 amp hour battery, if you're going to be doing a lot of long rip cuts of LVL, maybe not the normal everyday use for a track saw, but something it definitely can do. You get to kind of pick the right pack for what you've got at hand and, get to where you need to be that day for those applications that you're doing.
You guys touched on it before, but you have 3 main different lines of battery powered tools, right? You have the M12, the M18, and the MX tools. So how do these 3 lines differ? not just from the user's choice of the tool or where they're going to use it, but in the battery composition and the types of motors and electronics that are in these different lines of tools.
Yeah, you're right. We have three kind of really distinct lineups that we continue to support. An M12, which is really meant for portability, hand tool replacements. You hear a lot more about size and weight and ergonomics and how important that is when we're working with M12 products. You got M18, which is really about kind of the sweet spot in terms of performance and trying to drive what we call conversion from corded products. You mentioned framing nailers, pneumatic products, and even some small gas engine type items. And then MX Fuel is kind of different. It's really about equipment. Those batteries, those products are much bigger. They're really going after the gas engine space and some of that small, compact, light equipment that's out of the marketplace, and trying to revolutionize that space with lithium ion and brushless motor technology. In terms of the users, I think we see users across the board have all of our systems. Honestly, probably the most productive users that we work with are ones that see the value in all of those systems and pick their products accordingly. But in terms of how we design them, the components and parts are clearly different. An M12 drill and an MX Fuel cutoff saw obviously don't use the same pieces, right? I think that's probably...
Other than being red and black, there's not a lot of similarities between the two of them.
Great juxtaposition. But the way that we go about designing them, right, and the things that are important don't change all that much, right? Users are still going to care about durability. Now, what that means may differ, but we're still trying to use the most premium components, the latest and greatest technology, the most power dense motors, the best lithium ion, regardless of which one of those platforms we're working on. And I think the beauty of how we do things at Milwaukee is that as product managers, we get the ability to request and do things that are unique and different to deliver those solutions. So if we don't have the right motor technology, we can go ask the organization to develop a new motor specifically for that tool. If we don't have the right electronics technology, we can develop it. And that goes for all three of those systems. So it really allows us to do the right thing, again, for the user and to solve those problems. And each of those systems is allowed to kind of live in a unique space, although they coexist and complement each other, honestly, really well.
When you're thinking about the M12 platform, I've noticed that you have several tools that I would recognize as being more of an automotive mechanic type tool. Is there just something about certain tools that lend them better to the smaller battery platform? You spoke before about portability and not overpowering something to add weight to it. Is that why some of these tools end up in the M12 platform?
Yeah, we see M12 as a great way to replace hand tools in manual applications or repetitive motion type applications. So if you look at that lineup, you mentioned automotive products like ratchets is a great example where the small size of M12 and those battery packs, coupled with some of the smaller brushless motor technology that we have at our fingertips, can create a great powered ratchet and stop a user from having to do that manually. At the same time, you'll see things like caulk guns, where the constant squeezing of your hand becomes tiresome and honestly can create problems for end users. So the small nature of that battery allows us to replace hand tools both in automotive and outside. So it's really, again, about the right solution for the product at hand. You'll see certain categories where we have a very compact version of a product like the hacksaw, where we know that's used in a lot of tight quarters, really small spaces, and M12 allows us to get there. But we also have an M18 version for when you need a little bit more power, a little bit more runtime, and your application may be larger. So we do get to kind of pick and choose and create, again, that unique solution that's right for the applications at hand.
When you're thinking about the M12 tools, how important is it to use the right accessories that you provide with those tools? One of my personal favorite M12 tools is one of the smaller hammer drills that I think you guys have some different like chipping attachments for that I really use a lot. I think it's the smaller SDS based one, but I think a product rep cautioned me not to use too big of a attachment for it, a drill bit or a chipping type piece, if it's going to overpower the tool and be more than the tool was made for.
Yeah, I think it's important to use the right accessories, period, right? If we're talking about M12, or even using something that may not be great within an M18 product that we'd want to step in up, up to something bigger. But to your example with the rotary hammer, if you're going to take that tool and work overhead, it's going to be a phenomenal product for you, right? It's designed for being used in orientations where fatigue is going to become a factor for the user. It's not that it couldn't, potentially do some chipping, but that's not necessarily how we designed it and the user that we were looking to try to solve the problem for. So it's always a good idea to understand kind of the owner's manual and where we recommend certain products, what they're used for, and get a feel for how far we can push that performance. And we're always going to stretch it, right? We're always going to push further.
Right.
But, like I said, a large chipping SDS plus bit and a hammer that's meant for smaller 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch Tapcon holes and drilling overhead, probably not going to generate the best experience.
How much thought do you guys put into how the end user is going to abuse the tool? That was something that I hadn't really thought about until now, when I realized all the little chipping that I did with that while building my house was probably the wrong use for that tool.
Yeah, I would say everything we do focuses around the end user. And I'll give you actually a great example of this. You brought up M12 and the automotive tech. So there's a good story around the M12 fuel 3/8 ratchet. So a big part of what our teams do is they work with our design and engineering teams. They develop prototypes. They take them out to the field to get just initial feedback from end users. And one of the first sets of feedback that we actually received with the first prototype was around the size of the product. So it was actually the width or the girth of the ratchet itself. And it wasn't as ergonomic as what they would have liked. It actually reduced accessibility. And a big part of it is hitting many users within a specific trade, but also like broad trades, collecting that feedback. And then how we actually develop products is really exciting. So our teams go out, they engage directly with the users, they get very candid feedback of what works well, what doesn't work well, what would you improve, why, show me, right? So I understand. And then they actually take that back to the engineering teams and they beat it up and discuss it. And when we look at the M12 fuel ratchet, the net output of it was that we actually had to go create a brand new motor for it. So we created a smaller diameter, longer frame motor. And because of our vertical integration in motor design and manufacturing, we're able to do that very quickly. And then we can make a new prototype, take it back out, get that feedback. And all of this happens very quickly. But honestly, everything we do from the feature set, the functionality, the durability, the ergonomics, size, weight, performance, you name it, is all 100% focused around the user, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to increase their productivity, their safety, and solve their pain points.
So the M18 platform's widely used by pros and DIYers alike. Talk a little bit about that platform and the wide range of offerings and accessories that you have for that. And is there anything really cool coming down the pipeline that people should be looking for? And what is it in general about that specific size battery and the brushless motor that's proved to be so versatile?
Yeah, M18 is our biggest system. It's got the most solutions on it, and it's really a great kind of combination of power and size. Like I said before, really helps us kind of meet users at the conversion point of how do I get rid of my corded product and go cordless? How do I get rid of pneumatics and go cordless, or even small gas engines? You see some of our outdoor power equipment really leveraging M18 in a way that is really exciting. But the system's really designed, you mentioned DIYers, like everything we do as a Milwaukee brand is all about the pro. We understand there's plenty of people who want to buy a more premium solution, and we love that. But we spend our time focused with the professional user and making sure that if it meets their needs, we know, we've done the right thing. But your point, there's a lot of really cool products on M18 that span the range of users, between mechanical, electrical, plumbing, kind of our core MEP users, to carpenters, and remodelers, all the way out to the automotive tech. And like I said, the OPE professional, there's a lot of really cool things on the M18 platform. And the technology that Andrew talked about early on, the batteries, the motor electronics piece, has really allowed us to kind of push forward in this space. When him and I started as product managers, we were just kind of getting some of this cool new technology stuff up and coming. And the advancements that we've made so far has really allowed us to kind of spread our wings and take on new categories and new challenges and products that we've never thought possible. I can tell you, when I started, I didn't think a 12-inch miter saw and an 8.25-inch cordless table saw were going to get run off of an 18-volt battery. But here we are. We've had them now for a few years. They do really well, and I think we see that as we're still in the beginning innings. There's still a lot of runway. So when you ask like what's coming, obviously there's a lot of things we can't talk about that are in the pipeline. But to say that there's any shortage of really cool ideas and really cool products that are going to solve a lot of user frustrations and pain points, I mean, we've got plenty to keep us and our teams busy, which is exciting, because I think that's what gets me excited to come to work every day and get to do this kind of stuff, is, again, watching people get excited about the products we're putting in their hands.
So on the MX platform, you guys mentioned it before, or the MX Fuel, is that the right name
MX
for
Fuel,
it?
Yeah.
The MX Fuel platform, you're looking to replace some pretty big pieces of equipment with that I started off in the commercial world, and the idea that you guys are coming out with a plate tamping piece of equipment that's going to run on a battery, or some concrete finishing equipment. I was pretty surprised when I saw that on the website while doing prep for talking to you guys. But how does this platform differ specifically from the M18 that's allowing you to step up from maybe a table saw might be the biggest piece of equipment you're running on the M18 to being concrete finisher, or some of the other items you have in that platform?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I would say is MX Fuel is actually born out of the time we spent on the job sites, listening to the pain points of the professional user. And we saw a lot of very, commonalities, if you will, when it came to using light equipment. So whether it was products powered by gas, right? So you have the maintenance aspect of it, trying to start the thing, and the effort required with that if you haven't ran it in a while. And then even the fumes, right? So if you have to work in a tight proximity, like forget it, or you're gonna have to put a ton of effort into trying to manage ventilation as well. But not even just, the gas pain points that existed, but there was also a lot of, call it high power corded pain points. So if you look at a product like a core drill, and some of the challenges associated with that. So to paint a picture, for those that aren't familiar, you use a core drill to core out large holes in masonry, concrete, and imagine this. So imagine that you have an operator that's typically up on a ladder. They have this big, heavy device above them with a cord, and it has a tremendous amount of torque. And when you're trying to use a 6-inch coring bit and it actually catches material, it wants to take the operator for a ride, right? So it's a very scary product to use. So that was another opportunity where we saw, okay, there's a chance to improve safety and productivity with advancements in the battery, motor, electronics. So it was really born on those significant pain points. And what I can tell you is that it's very different versus M18. It's very different versus anything else that's out in the marketplace. M18 definitely more focused on, the power tool portion of the market and some of the solutions there. This is definitely geared towards light equipment. And I'll give you a couple examples here where we take the same basic principles from a technology standpoint. So the best battery, motor, electronics, intelligence that you can, put into a product. there's also very inherent differences. So if you think about how light equipment is used, the power demands, the amount of runtime that's needed, because you are going up against a lot of gas equipment, the environmental conditions, right? So they're often left outside. So what this meant is that we had to take all of that feedback and develop a system from the ground up to support it. So, what this means is for stuff like the batteries, if you look at an M18 versus MX battery, the scale is very different. A good example is the rail system, because of the products that it's going to be put on, like the plate compactor you talked about, right?
Yeah.
Where you're going to run that thing for a long time, and it's going to have a lot of vibration. So you have to integrate that into the design. In addition, motors are very different. Larger frame, where you're running 5 horsepower continuous operating. So very different dynamics in terms of the power and thermal management. So yeah, you're right. It's definitely going after the light equipment space, take the same design principles from a technology standpoint, but actually very, very different system to solve a very different set of pain points.
So from the perspective of someone who's really just always been a carpenter, how different is it for your engineering team to be working with standard kind of carpentry tools, your circular saws, framing nailers, but then also to be working on things being used by plumbers and electricians? I saw on the pipeline that you're starting to offer some HVAC solutions as well, and then all the way through to landscaping and commercial users.
Yeah, it's there's a couple of things to note there. Like we've grown tremendously over the last handful of years, and we've got some teams that are dedicated to working on tools for specific trades. So as our product management resources get more kind of in tune with the user and understand more, we're able to kind of share those learnings from an engineering perspective. That said, we do have people who work across kind of trade lines, and I think that's exciting for everybody. It challenges the group to make sure that they're kind of continuing to learn and evolve their understanding of not just the user themselves, but the technologies that we leverage. You can imagine, making a cordless nailer and a circ saw evolve some of the core technology we've been talking about today, but also some non-core technologies that are unique to each of those. So it's a challenge, but I think, honestly, I think most people enjoy it. They enjoy the variety that we get to work on at Milwaukee Tool and the different groups of users that we're focused on in making products for all of them.
We discussed this a little bit before, but what advice do you have for our listeners when it comes to selecting the right battery for the tool, and not just the battery, but the accessories in general? And I'm thinking like drill bits across the M12 to M18, or just even choosing the right tool for the right job.
Yeah, I can definitely hit on that. So when it comes to the accessories, just to extend on what Tyson mentioned earlier, it's one, if it's a very broad serving product like a drill, obviously you have a really wide range of accessories. And from a design standpoint, we take that into consideration, right? So it has the utility to be general purpose, if you will. However, the best thing I say is that we actually develop our accessories in-house to be optimized for cordless solutions. So what that means is our teams actually work together, and it's less about make an accessory for a corded product. It's more about how do I actually adjust this geometry, the material selection, the processing, where not only can I get the fastest cut, but I'm actually going to improve the efficiency of the cut as well, which means that you're going to get more runtime. So when we look at it, we take the approach of being a total solutions provider. And the best recommendation I would say is, yeah, definitely use a Milwaukee Tool accessory, because that it was actually designed and optimized for our cordless solutions, and that's going to get you the best experience. And then when it comes to batteries, I would say definitely depends on what you're doing. The task you brought up a good example of a specific application where you knew that you didn't want to make a lot of trips up and down, right? You didn't want to have to go up and down a ladder or lift or anything like that. So in that case, you're probably going to bring a higher capacity battery with you versus if you're a service individual and you're on a call and you can only carry so many things into the trip with you. you're probably going to go for something smaller and lighter because you're not going to do a ton of work.
So what is each of yours favorite tool from a design and engineering perspective, but also from an end user perspective? I'm guessing you guys get to, do a little bit with the tools at home and on projects of your own, right?
Well, we get to do a lot of work with them at the office. So when it comes to getting our hands on, like that's part of what we get to do. We're not an end user, but we learn a lot about kind of what they like and dislike, and we try to, be that voice when working with the team. But I don't know, from an engineering like design perspective, probably the M18 Fuel multi-tool. My team worked on that. That's just a fun product. A lot of use, kind of new and exciting, and honestly, the performance is awesome. So it's enjoyable to use. The vibration's really low, but it cuts extremely fast and gets the job done quickly. I think because I'm not a professional user, I love like our M18 pack-out radio. Probably gets the most use by me personally, because I can use it in the garage. I can use it, when we're going to the beach, whatever it might be. So personally, I think that's probably the one that I use the most.
Yeah, for me, in terms of what's the most exciting from a design engineering standpoint, I would say stuff that's in development now that I can't share. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff that you'll see here the next year or so. But in terms of product,
you don't have a riding lawnmower coming, do you? You got the push one. I've seen a few battery powered riding lawnmowers out there now, waiting for a red and black one.
A lot of opportunity in OP with the landscape professional. But actually, for me, it was the M18 Fuel chainsaw. So I was a part of that project. My team was a part of the project, and it was really exciting because it was a new category in space for us. So when we take that approach, we go in eyes wide open, right? We don't come in with any preconceived notions about how to do something. So we start with a clean slate and get to pick apart what's out there and the challenges and pain points that they have with the existing product today. So it was really fun to look at just, little things like oiler system, gearing, the tensioning system, all that kind of stuff. But the other thing that was actually really fun was it was right at the cusp of new battery motor electronic technology. So some of the first prototypes we took out into the field, prior to that, we were getting pretty good feedback. People were excited about it. They saw the value in, a battery operated chainsaw, but we could tell it wasn't quite there, right? Like they liked it, but they weren't over the top about it. And it's another great example where we worked with motor engineer, battery engineers, and electrical engineers. And we developed a new set of technology that was over 50% more powerful than our prior generation. And when we took that prototype out into the field, it was like a flip of a switch. And it was, wow, like this is actually outperforming or hanging with like a smaller gas chainsaw that I use today. So for me, that was one to be really excited to be a part of, because it was one of the first actually battery operated chainsaws where you could really cut hardwoods, meaning that it had enough torque and power because of the motor battery, but also because of the gear ratio that was used, where you could cut a 14-inch of oak or maple without it just shutting off on you. So that really resonated with users and many pros in the field. For me personally, similar answer as Tyson. I love the M12 radio charger.
So it's been great having you both on. Is there anything that you want to say or ask the audience before we go, or any other pieces of advice about your tool offerings?
I think just if anyone's in the market for tools, know when you're looking at Milwaukee, it's product that's really been developed from the ground up with people who use tools every single day. If you're a pro that relies on a circular saw or a press tool or a drill or a chainsaw, all of the work that we're doing is try to make sure we're solving the problems that you have. And regardless if it's technology based in the improvements we can make there, or if it's another mechanism or technology that we're going to invest in, it's all really to try to make the lives of professional power tool users easier, better, more productive, safer. You name it, that's what we're about. And hopefully you guys give us a look if you haven't so far.
Yeah, and to add to that, we are all about continuous improvement. meaning that we're going to learn a lot of things along the way. We want the feedback. That's how we're going to get better. It's how we're going to provide better solutions. As Tyson mentioned, we get excited about that, excited to get the feedback, excited about solving, problems that and pain points that our users are facing. The other thing is we are committed to continuing to drive core technologies. You've heard me say the term battery motor electronics how many times through this discussion. And what I can tell you is that there is a lot of exciting stuff coming here over the next 12 months, call it, that's going to get people excited about the solutions that we can do with the systems we have today. So thanks for the time. Appreciate you having us on.
Tyson and Andrew, it's been great having you on, and thanks for taking the time to join me today, and thanks to everybody for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us wherever you're listening. Helps others find the podcast. Thanks again, everybody.